Sarah and Jake arrive at the secluded cabin they rented for a weekend getaway. The cabin is nestled deep in the woods, surrounded by tall trees. As they unpack, Sarah notices an old photograph tucked away in a drawer. She feels a chill but shrugs it off. That night, strange occurrences begin. Sarah hears footsteps outside the cabin and sees shadows moving in the darkness. She wakes Jake, but he dismisses it as her imagination. Sarah feels uneasy, sensing an eerie presence looming around the cabin. The next day, Sarah explores the cabin's attic and finds an old journal hidden beneath a dusty trunk. The journal belongs to a previous tenant, detailing bizarre encounters with an unknown entity. Sarah's heart races as she reads about the cabin's dark past. As night falls again, the paranormal activity escalates. Sarah and Jake hear whispers echoing through the cabin and feel a cold draft despite the fireplace burning brightly. Sarah catches glimpses of a shadowy figure lurking in the corners, sending shivers down her spine. Driven by fear, Sarah confronts the entity, demanding to know its intentions. The air grows heavy as a voice whispers sinister messages, filling Sarah with dread. Jake tries to intervene, but the entity's malevolent presence overwhelms them. With the entity's grip tightening, Sarah and Jake decide to flee the cabin. They race through the forest, their hearts pounding with each step. Behind them, they hear haunting laughter echoing through the trees, fueling their desperation to escape. Even after leaving the cabin, Sarah and Jake can't shake the feeling of being watched. Strange occurrences follow them, reminding them of the entity's lingering presence. They vow never to return to the cursed cabin, haunted by the memories of their terrifying ordeal. Months later, Sarah and Jake still grapple with the trauma of their encounter at the cabin. They seek solace in each other's company, finding comfort in the knowledge that they survived the horrors of the haunted woods. Yet, the memory of the malevolent entity continues to haunt their dreams, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows.
In the heart of Hollow Creek, an abandoned house sits atop a hill, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The locals whisper tales of a family who disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the echoes of their screams. But when a group of teenagers decides to spend the night in the house, they quickly realize that the rumors were just the beginning of the horrors that await them. As the group of teenagers gathers outside the house, they dare each other to spend the night inside, eager to prove their bravery. With nervous laughter and shaky hands, they push open the creaking door and step inside, their hearts pounding in their chests. Little do they know they're about to come face to face with the horrors that lie within. As the teenagers explore the house, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them, a sense of malevolence that seems to seep from the very walls. They hear whispers in the darkness and catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes. Fear grips them tight as they realize they're not alone in the house. As the night wears on, the teenagers uncover clues about the house's dark past. A family torn apart by tragedy, their spirits trapped within the walls for eternity. They find old photographs and newspaper clippings, piecing together the story of the family's demise. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night progresses, the house comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, objects move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appear in the darkness. The teenagers huddle together, their screams echoing through the empty halls as they realize they're trapped in a nightmare from which there's no escape. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the teenagers make a final stand against the evil that haunts the house. Armed with makeshift weapons and fierce determination, they confront the ghostly apparitions that roam the halls, knowing that their survival depends on their ability to banish the darkness that lurks within. As dawn breaks, the paranormal activity subsides, and the house falls silent once more. The teenagers emerge from that darkness, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them.
A group of 5 friends, Jack, Sarah, Mike, Emily, and Tom, stand in front of an old, abandoned house. The house is notorious in their town for being haunted. The friends are curious and decide to explore it. The friends push open the creaky front door. It swings open with a loud, eerie groan. Inside, the air is thick with dust, and the faint smell of decay lingers. The hallway is dimly lit, and shadows dance on the walls. They enter the living room, which is filled with old, decaying furniture. A broken chandelier hangs from the ceiling. Suddenly, they hear a faint whisper, but they can't make out the words. Everyone freezes, straining to listen. They find a door leading to the basement. Mike, the bravest of the group, decides to open it. The door creaks open, revealing a dark stairway. Cold air wafts up from the basement, sending shivers down their spines. They descend into the basement, using their phone flashlights to see. The basement is filled with old, rusted tools and broken furniture. Suddenly, Sarah screams as she sees a shadow move in the corner. They all point their lights towards it, but nothing is there. Emily finds an old, dusty diary on a table. She opens it and begins to read aloud. The diary tells the story of a family who lived in the house long ago. It describes strange happenings and ends abruptly with a final desperate plea for help. As Emily reads the last words, the whispering voices return, louder and more distinct. The friends realize the whispers are saying, "Get out!" Panic sets in as the whispers grow into loud, angry shouts. Terrified, the friends rush back up the stairs, stumbling and pushing each other in their haste. They reach the front door, but it slams shut on its own. They struggle to open it as the whispers turn into deafening screams. Jack turns around and sees a ghostly figure at the end of the hallway. The figure is a woman in tattered clothes with hollow eyes. She raises a finger to her lips, signaling for silence, then vanishes. The front door suddenly flies open. The friends burst out of the house, gasping for breath. They don't stop running until they are far away from the house. They vow never to return and to warn others about the horrors inside. Weeks later, a new group of curious explorers stands in front of the same house, oblivious to the horrors that await them inside.
In a small town nestled among the hills, a group of friends receives an invitation to spend a weekend at a secluded manor on the outskirts of town. Excited for a getaway, they eagerly accept, unaware of the darkness that lurks within the old estate. As they approach the imposing gates of the manor, a sense of unease washes over them, but they dismiss it as mere nerves. The friends enter the grand foyer of the manor, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Dust covers every surface, and cobwebs hang from the chandeliers overhead. Despite its faded grandeur, the manor exudes an air of mystery and intrigue. They exchange nervous glances, wondering what secrets lie hidden within its walls. As night falls, the friends gather for a dinner party in the grand dining hall. The table is set with fine china and silverware, but the food sits untouched, as if waiting for guests who will never arrive. As they dine, they can't shake the feeling of being watched, and strange noises echo through the empty halls. As the night wears on, the friends split up to explore the manor, each one drawn to a different part of the house by an unseen force. They wander the darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Strange whispers fill the air, their words indistinct but undeniably menacing. As they explore, one of the friends encounters a ghostly apparition, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading down her back in loose waves. She reaches out to them with ethereal hands, her eyes filled with longing and sadness. The friend staggers back in terror, their heart pounding in their chest. As the night progresses, the friends uncover dark secrets hidden within the manor's walls, a history of tragedy and betrayal that spans generations. They find old journals and letters, piecing together the story of the manor's past inhabitants. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night wears on, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent forces that haunt the manor. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the manor if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out to confront the evil that haunts the manor once and for all. They gather in the grand foyer, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepare to face their greatest fears. With a final glance at one another, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As dawn breaks, the friends emerge from the manor, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. Grimsby Manor had a dark history that intrigued many, but only a few dared to explore its secrets. On a foggy autumn evening, Sarah, a young journalist with a passion for the paranormal, arrived at the mansion. She parked her car at the rusty gates, feeling a chill run down her spine. The mansion stood ominously in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Sarah pushed open the creaking door of Grimsby Manor. Inside, the air was cold and musty. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decaying foyer. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed through the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Grimsby. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Grimsby. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Grimsby appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Grimsby Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Grimsby's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Sarah knew the haunting was far from over. In the dead of night, a group of friends, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, arrive at the imposing Ravenswood Manor, a sprawling mansion nestled deep within the forest. The moon casts an eerie glow over the overgrown grounds as they approach the decrepit mansion, drawn by tales of its haunted past. As they step through the creaking front door, the group is enveloped by darkness. The air is thick with dust, and the floorboards groan beneath their feet. Sarah lights a lantern, casting flickering shadows on the walls as they explore the abandoned foyer. As they venture further into the mansion, they are greeted by the sound of whispers echoing through the hallways. The walls seem to close in around them, and Sarah's lantern flickers ominously. They exchange nervous glances, but press on, determined to uncover the secrets of Ravenswood Manor. In the heart of the mansion, they discover a forgotten library, its shelves lined with dusty tomes and ancient manuscripts. Emily's heart races as she picks up a weathered book, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and arcane rituals. Suddenly, a cold breeze fills the room, and the books on the shelves begin to sway as if moved by unseen hands. As they explore further, they come across a portrait hanging on the wall, a grim-faced man with piercing eyes that seem to follow their every move. Mark shudders as he gazes into the man's cold, lifeless eyes, and Sarah quickly averts her gaze, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. As night falls, the mansion comes alive with ghostly apparitions and otherworldly sounds. Emily's heart races as she catches a glimpse of a figure moving in the shadows, its form shifting and indistinct. She cries out in fear, and the others rush to her side, their lanterns casting shaky light on the empty hallway. As the night wears on, the group's sanity begins to fray. They are plagued by visions and nightmares, their minds filled with images of death and despair. Sarah clutches her head in agony as she hears voices whispering in the darkness, urging her to embrace the madness that lurks within Ravenswood Manor. In a desperate bid to escape the madness that grips them, the group confronts the malevolent force that haunts Ravenswood Manor. With trembling hands, they perform a ritual to banish the darkness, their voices raised in a desperate plea for salvation. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the windows, the mansion shudders and groans, the darkness receding into the shadows from whence it came.
On the outskirts of town lies a dense forest, shrouded in mystery and fear. Four friends, Alex, Sarah, Mark, and Jessica, venture into the woods, despite warnings of its haunted past. As they step into the darkness, eerie whispers seem to echo through the trees. Deep within the woods, they stumble upon an abandoned cabin, its windows boarded up and doors creaking in the wind. Against their better judgment, they enter, drawn by an inexplicable force. Inside, the air is heavy with the weight of forgotten secrets. Within the cabin, they find decaying furniture and cobwebs clinging to every corner. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the floorboards creak underfoot. Suddenly, they hear a faint whisper, chilling them to the bone. As they explore further, a sense of unease washes over them. Shadows dance in the corners of their vision, and the temperature drops. Then, they catch a glimpse of a spectral figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing with otherworldly light. Panic sets in as the ghostly figure approaches, its presence growing more ominous by the second. With hearts pounding, the friends flee the cabin, running blindly through the dark forest. Behind them, they hear the echoing laughter of the spirits that inhabit the woods. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the woods, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to return to the forbidden woods, haunted by the echoes of their harrowing encounter. The abandoned Ravenswood Asylum stood on a hill, shrouded in fog and mystery. Jessica, a paranormal investigator, arrived at dusk, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She parked her car and gazed at the looming building, its windows dark and empty like soulless eyes. Jessica pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the asylum was dark and cold. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling paint and graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. Her footsteps echoed eerily as she ventured deeper. As Jessica explored the main hallway, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a nurse standing at the end of the corridor. The nurse's face was pale and expressionless, and she slowly raised a finger to her lips as if to shush Jessica. Then she vanished into thin air. Jessica entered a room that appeared to have been a common area. Old, broken furniture was scattered around, and the walls were covered with faded, eerie drawings. As she examined the drawings, she heard faint whispers. She turned to see shadowy figures moving along the walls, their eyes glowing faintly. In the corner of the room, Jessica found an old journal. She opened it and read about the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients, mysterious deaths, and cover-ups. The journal mentioned a hidden basement where the worst atrocities occurred. Determined, Jessica set out to find it. Jessica found a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a staircase that descended into darkness. She took a deep breath and started down the steps. The basement was cold and damp, with rusty equipment and old stained medical tools scattered around. The air was thick with the smell of decay. In the basement, Jessica saw the spirits of the patients. They were trapped, reliving their torment. A particularly sorrowful spirit, a young woman named Alice, revealed that the asylum's director had performed cruel experiments on them. The spirits begged Jessica to help them find peace. Jessica found a hidden chamber where the director's spirit lingered, still obsessed with his experiments. She confronted him, demanding he release the tortured souls. The director's spirit raged, but the power of the trapped souls combined with Jessica's determination forced him to vanish into the ether. With the director's spirit gone, the asylum began to crumble. Jessica hurried out, watching from a safe distance as the building collapsed. The spirits were finally free, and a sense of peace settled over the area. As the sun rose, the fog lifted, revealing a bright new day.
At the edge of town lies the entrance to the Whispering Woods, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of the supernatural. The path winds its way into the heart of the forest, disappearing into the dense mist that clings to the trees like a shroud. Deep within the woods, a group of friends has set up camp for the night, seeking adventure in the unknown depths of the forest. A small campfire crackles and hisses, casting flickering shadows that seem to dance in time with the whispers that echo through the trees. In a moonlit clearing, the dense canopy of trees creates an oppressive atmosphere, suffocating the sounds of the night. Moss-covered ground crunches beneath the feet of the campers as they venture deeper into the heart of the woods, a sense of foreboding settling over them like a suffocating blanket. Suddenly, the group stumbles upon an old abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. Its windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges, swinging ominously in the breeze. Moonlight filters through the cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. Inside the cabin, the main room is a scene of decay and neglect. Decaying furniture sits shrouded in cobwebs, and dust hangs thick in the air like a tangible presence. The only sound is the creaking of floorboards beneath their feet and the distant whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls themselves. In the bedroom, a tattered mattress lies abandoned amidst peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster. Moonlight filters weakly through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the walls like living things. Descending into the basement, the air grows thick with the scent of decay and mold. Rusted chains hang ominously from the ceiling, their purpose long forgotten. The sound of dripping water echoes through the darkness, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time. In the attic, cobwebs cling like shrouds to forgotten relics of a bygone era. Dusty trunks sit amidst a clutter of long-forgotten possessions, their secrets buried beneath layers of neglect. Moonlight filters through a broken skylight, casting an ethereal glow upon the abandoned treasures that lie hidden in the shadows. Venturing deeper into the heart of the woods, the trees close in around them like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching up towards the sky like gnarled fingers. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. As dawn breaks, the first light of morning filters through the trees, casting a golden glow over the clearing. The campfire smolders, its flames reduced to embers, and the forest is bathed in an eerie silence that seems to linger long after the night has passed.
On a dark, windy night, 4 friends, Tom, Alice, Sam, and Lucy, stood at the entrance of an old abandoned mansion on Hollow Hill. They were dared to spend the night inside the house, which was rumored to be haunted. They pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They entered the living room, where an old dusty couch sat under a large broken window. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making them jump. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with each step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver as they heard a faint whispering sound. They opened one of the doors and found a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air was freezing, and the rocking chair in the corner started to move on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was colder and darker, with a damp smell. They found strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She looked at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Hollow Hill. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed to never speak of it again.
On a cold, windy night, 4 friends, John, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at an old abandoned house at the edge of town. They are curious about the rumors that the house is haunted and decide to explore. They push open the creaky front door and step inside. The air is cold and musty. The wooden floorboards creak under their feet, and they use their flashlights to see. In the living room, they find an old tattered couch and a dusty coffee table. On the wall, there is a large cracked mirror. Suddenly, they hear a whispering sound, but no one is there. They decide to explore upstairs. The staircase creaks loudly as they climb. The hallway is long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze seems to come from nowhere, making them shiver. They open one of the doors and find a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air is even colder here. Suddenly, a toy car moves on its own, and they hear a child's laughter. Frightened, they rush downstairs and find a door leading to the basement. They open it and descend into the darkness. The basement is damp and cold, with a feeling of dread in the air. In the basement, they find an old trunk. When they open it, a ghostly figure of a woman appears, her face twisted in sadness. She reaches out towards them, and they feel an icy chill. Terrified, they run up the stairs and out of the house. The door slams shut behind them, and they can still hear the whispers and laughter. They vow never to return. Maya received an old handwritten letter inviting her to Ravenwood Manor, a house she had never heard of. The letter was signed by her late grandmother, whom she had never met. Intrigued and seeking answers about her family's past, she decided to visit the manor. As she arrived, the sky was overcast, and the manor stood tall and imposing against the gloomy backdrop. Maya pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly in protest. The air inside was stale, and the grand entrance hall was shrouded in shadows. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the corners. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Maya found her way to the dining room, where a long table was set as if for a grand feast, though everything was covered in dust. Tall candles stood unlit, and an old chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, she heard a faint whispering, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. In the hallway, Maya stopped in front of a large portrait of a stern-looking woman. The plaque read, "Eliza Ravenwood, 1887. The woman's eyes seemed to follow Maya as she moved. She felt a sudden chill and a sense of being watched. A cold breeze brushed past her, causing her to shiver. Exploring further, Maya discovered a hidden passage behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed the shelf aside and found a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Taking a deep breath, she descended the stairs, her flashlight flickering. The air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Maya approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Maya's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled for her flashlight. When it flickered back on, she saw the ghostly figure of Eliza Ravenwood standing before her, eyes filled with malice. Maya stumbled back, tripping over a loose floorboard and landing hard. The diary she had found earlier slipped from her grasp, landing open on the floor. The pages detailed Eliza Ravenwood's descent into madness and dark rituals meant to bind her spirit to the house. Maya realized that Eliza's spirit was trying to protect a dark secret hidden within the manor. Determined to escape, Maya grabbed the diary and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows darting around her. She burst through the front door into the stormy night, her heart pounding. As she reached her car, she looked back at the manor and saw Eliza's ghostly figure watching her from an upstairs window.
Emma and Ryan, a young couple seeking adventure, venture into the dense woods surrounding their town. The trees loom tall, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. A sense of foreboding fills the air as they tread deeper into the unknown. As dusk falls, Emma and Ryan realize they've lost their way. Panic sets in as the shadows lengthen, obscuring the path ahead. Strange sounds echo through the trees, a rustling of leaves, the distant cry of an unknown creature. They quicken their pace, desperate to find their way back. In their search for shelter, Emma and Ryan stumble upon an old, dilapidated cabin hidden deep within the woods. The structure stands ominously, its windows shattered and doors creaking in the wind. Despite their reservations, they have no choice but to seek refuge within its decaying walls. As night falls, Emma and Ryan huddle together inside the cabin, seeking solace in the flickering light of a single lantern. But the darkness outside seems to seep in through the cracks, accompanied by soft whispers that echo through the stillness. They exchange nervous glances, their fear mounting with each passing moment. As they search the cabin for signs of life, Emma and Ryan stumble upon an old photograph hidden beneath a dusty pile of books. The image depicts a family, a mother, father, and child, smiling happily. But there's something unsettling about their eyes, as if they hold a secret that refuses to be forgotten. As Emma and Ryan try to make sense of the photograph, they're startled by a sudden noise, a scraping sound coming from the attic above. Heart pounding, they cautiously ascend the creaky staircase, their nerves on edge. But what they find waiting for them is beyond their worst nightmares. In the attic, Emma and Ryan come face to face with a malevolent presence, an ethereal figure shrouded in darkness. Its eyes burn with an otherworldly intensity as it reaches out to them, its whispers growing louder with each passing moment. Emma and Ryan know they must confront the entity if they hope to escape the woods alive. With every ounce of courage they possess, Emma and Ryan confront the entity, channeling their fear into strength. As they do, the darkness begins to recede, replaced by a blinding light that fills the attic. With one final push, they break free from its grasp and flee into the night, leaving the haunted cabin behind them. As dawn breaks over the horizon, Emma and Ryan emerge from the woods, battered but alive. They exchange a weary smile, grateful to have survived the horrors of the Whispering Woods. Though they may never forget the darkness that lurks within, they know that they've emerged stronger for having faced it together. Lena, Mark, and Sarah arrived at Ravenwood House, an old, decrepit mansion that had been abandoned for years. The house stood at the end of a lonely road, surrounded by thick, twisted trees. They were there to investigate the rumored hauntings for their paranormal blog. "This place is giving me chills already," Sarah whispered, hugging her coat tighter. "Perfect for our blog," Mark replied, setting up his camera. "Let's capture some real scares." Lena pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. "Let's go in and set up. The sooner we start, the sooner we can leave." Inside, the house was dark and filled with the smell of mold and dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture was scattered about. As they explored, they found old portraits on the walls, books with yellowed pages, and broken trinkets. "Look at this," Mark said, picking up a dusty photograph of a family. "They must have lived here a long time ago." Lena shivered. "It feels like they're still watching us." Sarah glanced nervously at the dark corners. "Let's just get the footage and get out of here." Lena found an old leather-bound journal on a table covered in dust. She opened it carefully and started reading aloud. The journal belonged to the house's previous owner, detailing strange occurrences and sightings of a ghostly figure. "Listen to this," Lena said, her voice trembling. "The owner saw a woman in white every night standing by the window." Sarah hugged herself. "That's creepy. What happened to them?" Lena turned the pages. "It just stops. No explanation." Mark filmed Lena reading. "This is exactly what we need. Keep going." As they continued exploring, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. They saw a figure in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. The figure's face was obscured by shadows, but they could feel its eyes on them. "Do you see that?" Mark whispered, his camera shaking. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "Let's get out of here." The figure started moving towards them. They ran, slamming a door behind them. "We have to leave," Sarah insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "Not yet," Lena said, determined. "We need to find out what's really happening here." Lena found another entry in the journal that described a ritual to banish the spirit. They needed to gather candles, salt, and a mirror. The tension was palpable as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Mark asked, placing candles around the room. "It has to," Lena replied, pouring salt in a circle. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah held the mirror, her hands shaking. Just hurry. As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier created by the salt circle. Lena chanted the incantation from the journal, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us!" Sarah shouted, clutching the mirror tightly. "We're almost there!" Lena yelled, her focus unbroken. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With a final, desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. They collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. "We did it," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their equipment and left the house, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Mark said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the house, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The house behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Lena said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Mark and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, leaving the haunted Ravenwood house behind, grateful to have survived their night of terror. Sophie arrived at Briarwood Manor, a sprawling estate she inherited from her great-uncle. The mansion stood alone on a hill, surrounded by gnarled trees and thick fog. As she approached, the gate creaked open on its own, setting her nerves on edge. She hesitated but walked through, determined to uncover the secrets of her inheritance. Sophie stepped inside the manor, greeted by a grand but dusty foyer. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. As she moved further in, the front door slammed shut behind her with a loud bang. Startled, she spun around, but no one was there. The only light came from her flickering flashlight. In the living room, old furniture was covered in white sheets. An antique clock ticked loudly, breaking the silence. Sophie noticed a photograph on the mantelpiece, showing her great-uncle with an unknown woman. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Sophie walked down a hallway lined with portraits of her ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her every move. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. As she continued, she heard a whisper, almost as if someone was calling her name. She froze, heart pounding. In the library, Sophie found shelves filled with dusty old books. One book in particular caught her eye, an old journal. As she read through it, she discovered it belonged to her great-uncle, detailing strange events and encounters with a dark presence. The room grew colder, and she felt like she was being watched. Behind a bookshelf, Sophie discovered a hidden door. She hesitated but felt compelled to open it. The door revealed a dark, narrow staircase leading down. Holding her flashlight, she descended, each step echoing in the silence. The air grew damp and cold. The basement was filled with old furniture and strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center stood an altar with black candles and an old book. As Sophie approached, the candles flickered to life, casting an eerie glow. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she heard distant whispers. Sophie's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of the unknown woman from the photograph, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help me," the figure whispered. Terrified, Sophie ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with shadows moving and doors slamming. She burst through the front door into the foggy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. She looked back once more, vowing never to return. Breathing heavily, Sophie glanced back at the manor as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of the unknown woman watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
A car winds its way down a narrow road, flanked on both sides by dense forest. Inside, a group of friends chats excitedly, their anticipation palpable as they approach their destination, a secluded cabin deep in the heart of the Whispering Woods. As they round a bend in the road, the cabin comes into view, its weathered facade blending seamlessly with the surrounding trees. The friends step out of the car and approach the cabin, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of pine needles covering the ground. The air is cool and crisp, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. They unlock the door and step inside, their excitement mounting as they take in their surroundings. The cozy fireplace, the rustic furniture, the promise of a weekend filled with laughter and adventure. The next day, the friends set out on a hike through the whispering woods, eager to explore their surroundings. They follow a narrow trail that winds its way through the dense forest, the canopy overhead casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. As they walk, they hear the faint sound of whispering in the distance, but they dismiss it as nothing more than the wind rustling through the trees. As they hike deeper into the woods, the friends stumble upon an abandoned clearing, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. The grass is overgrown, and the remains of a crumbling stone structure lie scattered among the trees. A sense of unease washes over them as they enter the clearing, the whispering growing louder with each step they take. As they explore the clearing, the friends are overcome by a sense of foreboding, the whispering growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. They exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to locate the source of the strange noises. But the forest remains silent, its secrets hidden beneath a shroud of darkness. Suddenly, one of the friends disappears without a trace, leaving the others panicked and confused. They call out into the darkness, their voices echoing through the trees, but there's no response. Frantic, they search the clearing, their fear mounting with each passing moment. But the forest remains silent, as if swallowing their cries for help. As night falls, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the whispers that fill the air. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds strained to the breaking point. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the whispering woods, if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the remaining friends set out to confront the evil that haunts the whispering woods once and for all. They gather in the clearing, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepare to face their greatest fears. With a final glance at one another, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As dawn breaks, the remaining friends emerge from the whispering woods, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. On a chilly autumn night, four friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Ravenswood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night inside to prove their bravery. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped into the foyer. The air was musty, and the only light came from their flashlights. Dust-covered furniture and cobwebs filled the room, adding to the eerie atmosphere. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner, and an old tattered sofa sat under a large broken window. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, making everyone jump. They cautiously climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint, eerie whispers. They opened one door and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Ravenswood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again.
Emily and her brother Jack inherit an old mansion from their estranged uncle. The house, nestled deep in the woods, is grand but eerily quiet. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate key in a dusty drawer. She keeps it, wondering what it might unlock. That night, Emily wakes up to the sound of whispers and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as her imagination. When she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing under a tree in the garden. She calls Jack, but the figure is gone when he arrives. The next day, Emily and Jack search for what the key might unlock. They find a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the study. The key fits perfectly, revealing a small room filled with old books, an antique mirror, and a diary. Emily reads the diary and learns it belonged to a woman named Margaret who lived in the mansion years ago. Margaret wrote about seeing a ghostly figure and hearing whispers. Her last entry hints at a hidden treasure in the house. That night, Emily sees the ghostly figure in the mirror. The figure, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, looks sad and mouths the words, "Help me." Terrified, Emily tells Jack, who becomes determined to help her. Emily and Jack search the house for clues about Margaret's hidden treasure. They find a series of letters behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The letters reveal that Margaret's child was taken from her, and she hid a valuable locket somewhere in the house to protect it. As they continue their search, the ghost becomes more active, appearing more frequently and growing more desperate. Emily and Jack follow clues to the attic, where they find a locked chest. The key fits perfectly. Inside the chest, they find Margaret's locket, along with a letter explaining her tragic story. Margaret's spirit appears, looking peaceful. She thanks them silently before fading away, her spirit finally at rest. With Margaret's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter. The whispers and apparitions stop. Emily and Jack decide to stay and restore the mansion, feeling a connection to its history and to Margaret. Months later, Emily and Jack enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Margaret and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The mansion is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way. In a small town nestled among the hills, an old abandoned mill stood tall, its dark silhouette looming against the twilight sky. For years, the townsfolk had whispered tales of strange occurrences within its decaying walls. Tonight, a group of curious teenagers dared each other to explore its depths, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. Among the group was Sarah, a brave soul who accepted the dare without hesitation. Her friends, Alex, Jake, and Emily, exchanged nervous glances but followed her lead. Armed with only flashlights and nervous laughter, they ventured into the mill, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. Shadows danced on the walls, and strange symbols adorned the crumbling brickwork. The group pressed on, drawn deeper into the labyrinthine corridors by an unseen force. As they explored, they began to hear whispers, a faint, ghostly sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. Sarah's heart raced as she urged her friends to keep moving, but the whispers grew louder, echoing through the halls like a sinister chorus. Suddenly, a figure materialized before them, a ghostly apparition with hollow eyes and a tattered gown. Sarah gasped, frozen in terror as the ghost reached out with spectral hands. With a scream, she bolted, her friends close behind, but the ghost pursued them with relentless determination. They raced through the corridors, their hearts pounding in their chests as the ghost closed in. Sarah could feel its icy breath on her neck, its chilling touch sending shivers down her spine. With every turn, they prayed for an exit, but the mill seemed to stretch on endlessly, trapping them in its clutches. Just when all hope seemed lost, they stumbled upon a door, a faint glimmer of moonlight shining through the cracks. With a burst of adrenaline, they pushed through, stumbling out into the night air. Behind them, the mill collapsed in a cloud of dust, the ghost's haunting cries fading into the distance. As they collapsed in exhaustion, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the ghost still lingered, watching them from the shadows. She vowed never to return to the mill, but she knew its haunting presence would stay with her forever, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. On a dark, stormy night, 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Eva, walk down a desolate street. They come across an old, dilapidated house at the end of the road. The house is known among locals as the last house on the street and is rumored to be haunted. Despite their fear, curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore the house. The door creaks loudly as they push it open, revealing a dusty, abandoned interior. They enter the living room, which is filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror on the wall. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, and they hear faint whispering. The whispering leads them to a hidden door behind the stairs, which opens to a dark basement. Hesitant but determined, they descend the creaky steps, the air growing colder with each step. In the basement, they find an old chest. When they open it, they discover ancient cursed artifacts and a diary. The diary tells the story of a family that disappeared mysteriously, and it warns of a malevolent spirit trapped in the house. As they read the diary, the temperature drops, and a chilling presence fills the room. Shadows begin to move on their own, and the friends see a ghostly figure emerging from the darkness. Realizing they need to escape, they run back up the stairs. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. They finally break free and run out into the stormy night, vowing never to return. Back in the safety of their homes, they sit together, shaken but relieved. They know they will never forget the night they encountered the haunted house at the end of the street.
On a stormy night, four friends, Emma, Jake, Sophie, and Liam, arrive at Ravenswood Manor, an abandoned house said to be haunted. The wind howls and lightning illuminates the decaying facade. Jake, the adventurous one, suggests they spend the night there. Despite their fear, they all agree and push open the rusted gate. The front door creaks loudly as they step inside. The foyer is dark and smells of mold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and broken furniture lies scattered around. Their flashlights reveal faded portraits on the walls, eyes seemingly following them. The door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Emma notices a music box on the mantel. She opens it, and it starts playing a haunting melody. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushes past them, and the room feels alive. A shadow moves across the room, and Sophie screams. They shine their flashlights in the direction of the movement, but see nothing. Jake insists it was just a trick of the light, but the others aren't so sure. They decide to stick together as they continue exploring. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes. The air is colder here, and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Liam opens a cupboard, and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at him. He yells and slams the door shut, his heart racing. They find a door leading to the basement. Jake suggests they go down, but Emma hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange markings on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board on it. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see red eyes staring at them from the darkness. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs. They race towards the front door, but it won't budge. Ghostly wails echo through the house, and the walls seem to close in on them. Jake finds a side window and breaks it with a chair. One by one, they crawl through, escaping into the stormy night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the wet grass, gasping for breath. The manor looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The storm begins to calm, but the memory of what they saw remains vivid. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night stay with them, a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed.
On a cold, moonlit night, four friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. Ravenwood Manor had always been shrouded in mystery and fear. On a cold, misty evening, Alex, a young journalist with a thirst for the unknown, arrived at the manor. The gates were rusty and covered in ivy, and as Alex pushed them open, they creaked ominously. The mansion loomed in the distance, its dark windows staring back like lifeless eyes. Alex pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Dust-covered chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay draped in white sheets. His footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as he ventured deeper inside. As Alex explored the mansion, he felt a sudden chill. Turning around, he saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving his heart racing. Determined to find answers, he made his way to the library, hoping to uncover the mansion's dark past. In the library, Alex found rows of dusty old books. As he searched through them, he heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Ravenwood. The entries spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Alex's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught his attention. In it, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Alex reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Alex discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. He found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Ravenwood. As Alex read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Ravenwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Alex and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Alex knew he had to leave immediately. Alex bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Alex reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article, revealing the dark history of Ravenwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Lord Ravenwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Alex knew the haunting was far from over.
James, a middle-aged man who recently lost his job, receives an unexpected letter. It's an invitation to visit Willow Creek, a small town where his late grandmother owned an old, decrepit house. Intrigued and in need of a change, he decides to visit the house with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emma. "Why have we never heard of this place before?" Sarah asks, reading the letter again. James shrugs. "I guess it was forgotten, just like Grandma." Emma, excited by the idea of an adventure, chimes in, "I can't wait to see what it's like." The family arrives at Willow Creek after a long drive. The town is eerily quiet, with old, abandoned buildings lining the streets. They finally reach the house, which stands at the end of a narrow, overgrown road. The house is large, Gothic, and appears to have been untouched for decades. "This place is giving me the creeps," Sarah whispers, holding Emma's hand. James tries to reassure them. "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Inside, the house is dark and filled with dust. The furniture is covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hang from the ceiling. As they explore, Emma finds an old diary in one of the bedrooms. "Look at this, Mom," Emma says, flipping through the pages. Sarah reads aloud. June 12th, 1923. "Strange noises keep me awake at night. I fear the spirits are restless." James frowns. "Spirits?" That night, the family tries to sleep, but strange noises echo through the house. Doors creak, and distant whispers can be heard. Emma wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling a cold breeze. She sees a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. "Dad, is that you?" she whispers, but the figure vanishes. Emma runs to her parents' room, terrified. "Mom, Dad, there's someone in my room!" The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the house. They discover that it was built by a wealthy family in the 1800s. But tragedy struck when the entire family mysteriously disappeared. "This place has a dark history," Sarah says, reading an old newspaper article. James nods. "We need to find out what happened." Emma adds, "Maybe the diary has more clues." Back at the house, James finds a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they discover a room filled with old photographs, letters, and strange symbols drawn on the walls. There's also a large locked chest. "These symbols look like some kind of ritual," Sarah says, tracing them with her finger. James tries to open the chest. "We need to find the key." Emma points to a photograph. "Look, that's the family that lived here." That night, the hauntings become more intense. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emma is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We need to leave now!" Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. James grabs the diary and starts reading the last entry. "We must complete the ritual to appease the spirits." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual described in the diary. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. James reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emma hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, James!" Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, James completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the house feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell the authorities about this place," Sarah says, looking back at the house. James nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving Willow Creek behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emma finds the old diary on her bedside table, even though she left it in the house. Her heart races as she opens it, and a cold breeze fills the room. A whispering voice fills the air. "You cannot escape the past." Emma turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness. As the sun sets behind the distant mountains, a weary traveler pulls up to the entrance of an old rundown hotel. The building looms ominously against the darkening sky, its windows boarded up and its paint peeling. Ignoring the sense of foreboding that tugs at their mind, the traveler steps out of the car, their footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. Inside the hotel, the traveler is greeted by the receptionist, a gaunt, pale figure with hollow eyes and a forced smile. They hand over their ID and credit card, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in their stomach as the receptionist hands them a rusty key and points them towards the stairs. With a nervous glance around the lobby, the traveler heads off to find their room. As the traveler makes their way down the dimly lit hallway towards their room, they can't shake the feeling of being watched. The floorboards creak beneath their feet, and shadows dance along the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. They quicken their pace, their heart pounding in their chest as they reach their destination. As the traveler settles into their room, they're startled by a sudden chill that fills the air. They turn to see a ghostly figure standing in the corner, a woman dressed in Victorian-era clothing, her eyes hollow and her expression mournful. The traveler's blood runs cold as they realize they're not alone in the room. As the night wears on, the hotel comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, lights flicker and dim, and strange noises echo through the hallways. The traveler huddles in their room, their heart racing as they listen to the unsettling sounds that fill the air. In the dead of night, the traveler is awoken by a sudden chill that fills the room. They sit up in bed, their eyes wide with fear as they realize they're not alone. Standing at the foot of the bed is the ghostly apparition from before, her eyes fixed on the traveler with an intensity that sends shivers down their spine. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the traveler makes a desperate bid for escape. They leap out of bed and race towards the door, their heart pounding in their chest as they flee down the haunted hallways. Behind them, they can hear the ghostly apparition's mournful wail, urging them to stay. As the traveler bursts out into the cool night air, they're greeted by the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They pause for a moment, their breath coming in ragged gasps as they take in the beauty of the sunrise. With one last glance back at the haunted hotel, they turn and walk away, knowing they'll never forget the terror they experienced within its walls.
Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits Blackwood Manor from her estranged grandmother. The manor is located on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by dense, dark woods. Emma decides to move in, hoping the isolation will inspire her writing. As she arrives, she feels an eerie chill. The mansion, with its tall spires and ivy-covered walls, seems to loom over her ominously. Despite her unease, Emma is determined to make this her new home. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, her mind racing with unease and exhaustion. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the attic. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her grandmother and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's grandmother. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Blackwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning.
On a foggy night, 4 friends, Jack, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie, arrived at Blackwood Manor. The old abandoned mansion was said to be cursed. They had come to investigate the legend. They pushed it open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung in the corners. The living room was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. An antique chandelier hung from the ceiling, and a grand piano stood in the corner. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump. They moved to the library, where shelves of dusty books lined the walls. Jack picked up an old book, and as he opened it, a cold breeze swept through the room, making the candles flicker. They entered a long hallway filled with old portraits. The eyes of the portraits seemed to follow them as they walked. Mia shivered, feeling a chill run down her spine. At the end of the hallway, they found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to go down. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the corner, they saw a ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She reached out to them, and they felt an icy chill. Terrified, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return. Back at their homes, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and decided never to speak of it again.
In a remote corner of the countryside stands an imposing, abandoned mansion, its windows shattered and ivy creeping up the walls. A group of friends, Emma, Jack, Lily, and Max, dare each other to spend the night inside. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the decrepit facade. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the mansion's foyer. The air inside is thick with dust, and the sound of their footsteps echoes through the empty halls. As they explore further, they feel an oppressive weight pressing down on them. Inside the mansion, they encounter rooms filled with decaying furniture and faded wallpaper. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the temperature drops noticeably as they explore deeper. A sense of unease settles over the group as they realize they are not alone. As they delve further into the mansion, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls themselves. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a ghostly apparition materializes before them, a spectral figure with hollow eyes and tattered clothing. Its ethereal form glides towards them, its movements hauntingly graceful. Frozen with fear, they realize they are in the presence of something not of this world. With a collective scream, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark halls, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly figure follows, its unearthly wails echoing in their ears. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the haunted mansion again, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its walls.
On a foggy autumn evening, four friends, Lucy, Tom, Ava, and Ben, stand before Greystone Manor, an abandoned mansion known for its haunted past. Ben, always the thrill-seeker, dares the group to spend the night inside. With a mix of nervousness and excitement, they agree, pushing open the creaky iron gate and stepping onto the overgrown path leading to the mansion. The front door groans loudly as they push it open, revealing a dark, musty foyer. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and a thick layer of dust covers everything. The air smells of mold and decay. They switch on their flashlights, casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper as they step inside, the door slamming shut behind them. They decide to explore and find themselves in a grand library, filled with old leather-bound books. A large, dusty chandelier hangs from the ceiling, and an ancient fireplace sits cold and empty. Lucy notices a book lying open on a table, its pages filled with strange symbols. As she touches it, the chandelier above them begins to sway. A sudden cold breeze blows through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. In the darkness, they hear faint whispers and the soft sound of footsteps. Panic sets in as they fumble to turn their flashlights back on, only to see a shadowy figure disappear into the next room. They follow the figure into the kitchen where old rusted appliances and broken dishes litter the floor. The air is colder here and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Ava opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. In the hallway, they find a door leading to the basement. Ben suggests going down, but Lucy hesitates. The others convince her, and they slowly descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and the air is damp and chilly. They feel an overwhelming sense of dread. In the basement, they find an old wooden table with strange markings. A low growl resonates through the room, and they see glowing red eyes staring at them from the far corner. Panic-stricken, they scramble back up the stairs as the growling grows louder. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally bursting out into the cold night air. The mansion falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse into the grass, gasping for breath. The mansion looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night air is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety. Back at their homes, the friends try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night remain vivid, and they realize that some horrors can never be forgotten. The whispering woods loomed ominously under the fading light of dusk. Trees stood tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like clawed hands. A thick mist settled among the trees, obscuring the path ahead and adding to the sense of foreboding. Deep within the woods, an abandoned cabin stood desolate. Its windows were boarded up, and its door hung off its hinges. Weathered wood and creeping vines adorned the exterior. Inside, darkness and mustiness filled the air, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like ghostly veils. The living room of the cabin was sparse, with a dilapidated sofa and a dusty rug covering the floor. A broken window let in a chilling breeze, causing the faded photographs on the walls to flutter ominously. The kitchen was in disarray, with broken cabinets and scattered utensils. The sink was stained, and a thick layer of grime covered the countertops. A single flickering bulb cast long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The backyard of the cabin was overgrown with weeds, and old rusted gardening tools lay abandoned among the tangled foliage. A gnarled tree stood in the center, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The whispering woods at midnight were cloaked in darkness. The trees seemed to sway and whisper secrets to each other, their branches creaking in the stillness of the night. Strange, ghostly lights flickered among the shadows, adding to the sense of otherworldly dread. The bedroom was cold and drafty, with a creaky bed covered in moth-eaten sheets. Moonlight filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up window, casting eerie patterns on the floor and illuminating the room in a ghostly glow. The attic was filled with dusty, forgotten belongings. Old trunks sat in the corners, their contents long forgotten. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay, as if the very walls were whispering tales of the past. As dawn broke, the whispering woods were bathed in the soft light of morning. The mist began to dissipate, revealing the twisted trees and tangled underbrush. Birds chirped in the distance, bringing a sense of calm to the once eerie forest, as if the night's terrors had never existed.